With wars raging in Gaza, in Ukraine, it seems appropriate to talk about the nations of the world. After World War II, the United Nations was established. After the devastation that took place in the 20th century, World War I, then World War II, it made sense to come together and have one place where nations can communicate and preempt wars. In some ways it has worked. Wars have definitely become less. But has it resolved all the issues? But I don't want to talk about the United Nations, especially considering, as cynics put it, that it's united mostly in condemning Israel, which is interesting. Israel is also a nation. The disproportionate amount of condemnations, now with the international court hearing about so alleged genocide by Israel. And as many writers and thinkers have pointed out, Bret Stephens recently in a powerful article, the obscenity of it, after what has happened and is happening in other countries of the world that Israel is singled out. It seems like the nations can unite very easily, as they did during World War II, against Jews. But that's not per se the discussion that I want to have, though it deserves a discussion, but it does touch upon it. Because from the beginning of time, nations and countries have been pitted against each other. I mean, we are a history of wars. It's interesting in the prophecy, one of the greatest prophecies in the book of Isaiah and other of the prophets, they talk about a time where one nation will no longer wage war against another. They will not lift up a sword. As a matter of fact, the United Nations across the street has the verse from Isaiah that they shall turn swords into plowshares. That all the nations of the world will remain diverse, but they'll all be united. So, what does it really take to create harmony within diversity like that? And I speak now from a Jewish perspective in the sense, because the Jewish people are a nation that has been here probably longer than any other. And we have always prayed and aspired to finding that medium, that healthy medium, the balance of peaceful nations living side by side. As I said, it has gotten better. But still, what is the ultimate formula? To have united nations versus divided nations. So really it comes down to, let's think of it on a microcosmic level, on individuals. No two people are alike. No two people have the same opinion. And yet you can find the harmony within diversity. You can find diverse people, and yet they coexist. More than they coexist. They actually complement each other. Take nature. Nature has more organisms and more cells and more diversity than anything. And yet in a healthy balance, they all work together in one symbiotic, synergetic flow. Take the human body. There are close to 75 trillion cells, and thousands of different systems. And if you did not know they work together, you would never believe they can join. And yet they work together in a healthy body in this harmonious fashion. On a man-made level, take an orchestra. An orchestra could have a 100-piece orchestra, different instruments, different musicians. When properly balanced, it creates not just beauty, beautiful music. At the same time, that same diversity can turn into divisiveness and to discord and even to conflict and war itself. So it's clearly not the diversity that creates conflict. There's some other factor, an invisible factor. So let's dissect the word synergy. Synergy means different forces at work, and altogether, cumulatively, it's more than the sum of the parts. A classic example would be the letters in a word. Take the word blessing. It's made up of B-L-E-S-S-I-N-G. Many different letters. On their own, each letter has its own meaning and can be placed in other words. But when they're put together, it creates a concept that's more than the letters and the sum of the parts. You have a blessing. Blessing is more than just a B plus an L plus an E plus an S and an S. In this case, also an I and G. That's synergy. Synergy is two people lifting a weight that is more than they can lift separately. What does that mean? If one person can lift 100 pounds, another person can lift 100 pounds, you think together they can lift 200. No, they can lift something like 210 pounds. Where's that extra strength coming from? The synergy. So there's some accumulative energy that happens when things come together that they support and help each other. As I said before, the human body is not just the sum of the parts. There's something more powerful. So the Kabbalists and the mystics, they call it the third path. The third path that is like the mediator, the harmonizer between two forces. Beauty, by definition, is made up of diversity. When you say a beautiful face, you don't just mean a beautiful nose or eyes or complexion or ears. It's some combination of all of them together that creates what we call beauty. Which means there's always the possibility of the opposite. One color is never beautiful. You can have a beautiful color blue, beautiful red. Beauty is when red, blue, and green and many other colors mix together and you have this composite, you have this mosaic, the harmony within diversity. So it's interesting. As soon as you have more than one color, you also have potential chaos. As I said, diversity can go the other way. Imagine you don't have an orchestra that's coordinated with one conductor. Imagine the colors are not being mixed properly. It'll actually be grating on our ears if we heard many musical notes not played in the right order. On the other hand, played in the right order, it's harmony. So essentially, beauty and chaos are two ends of the same spectrum. One is diversity that's balanced, the other is a diversity that conflicts with each other. In the Kabbalistic model, you have the world called Tohu, many intense forces, but they can't work with each other. Think of it, a bunch of geniuses put together, and one does not tolerate the other, precisely because of their intensity and their genius. And then you have diversity that works together, a team, real teamwork. I'm always amazed when you see the credits at the end of a film. Thousands of names. How easy is it for egos to clash? How many projects fall apart before they end up happening? So it's quite a miracle to have so many different talents, but they come together and they create one beautiful film. The same thing with a good book. So now to take it back to the macrocosm, human beings are exactly the same way. The difference is musical notes don't have free will. You're not going to have musical notes jumping off the musical sheet, a music sheet, and doing their own thing. Human beings, their diversity can lead them to have different agendas. And then when you add into the equation control and power and greed, there you have. You have all the ingredients that will lead to potential discord or worse. On the other hand, if there's that invisible energy, and we'll introduce the word bittul. Bittul is a word in Hebrew that is like a type of suspension of self, of your own strong ego and identity, allowing room for the synergy, allowing room for others in. And together, that creates what we call true unity. Unity is not singularity. It's not that everything is a clone. It's the harmony within diversity. And this is what we have always aspired to. You know, some people wonder, is there an inherent animosity between nations among each other? You see throughout history nations that really were blood enemies. They were arch enemies of each other. Take the Jewish people, there are those that hated Jews and still do. So you would think that inherent to the diversity of nations would be battle and war. Maybe some coexistence if it serves everybody's mutual interest. So I'm here to tell you that's not the case. When you introduce a force that's higher than the diversity, a unifying force that says that we need each of you differently, but together we have a cause that's greater than each of our own agendas, That's when you achieve the magic of true beauty, the magic of unity. So unity is about taking many different pieces and joining them together in one, like a puzzle, which each piece complementing and supporting the other. And each piece indispensable, while also needing the others for its completion. Can we teach human beings to have that attitude? Only one way. When you get yourself out of the way. You get your agenda out of the way. Fine, you have your interests. The other also has interests. Now we have to go to a place that transcends our interests while also permeating them, while also infusing them with that higher sense of purpose, which is what the secret of all harmony is, the harmony of the human body, of nature, of everything we spoke about before. It's appreciating the diversity, but also appreciating that there's something beyond them all that connects them all. That's why you need a conductor of an orchestra. I used to always wonder, these are great musicians. They have musical notes. They're all reading the same notes. Why can't they just manage? And I was told, you can tell. Can they play even without a conductor? They could, but there'll be things missing. The conductor is that outside force that coordinates all the different details and makes sure it's seamless. So this is what we aspire to. We don't aspire to war. Even if you have strong opinions, even if you have a strong belief system. Religious wars can be very, very destructive because they're in the name of religion, in the name of God. So even when you have strong ideologies, one thing is stronger than the ideology, and that is the connection to the purpose of it all. Don't be married just to your ideology, as powerful it is. The ultimate ideology, that we're all created equal. And we all have a unique role. And what your role has to, and the role you have to play, only you can. Only you and only you can accomplish your part of this. So everyone needs you, and you need everyone else. But that requires a measure of humility and modesty and suspension of your own defined parameters, and especially inflexible ones. The ability to go beyond that and recognize that there's a bigger picture here. And that bigger picture requires and needs every component. It's sad when you see war, when you see people who officially should all be wanting peace because peace is good for their families. And yet something becomes more important, the hatred, which I talked about in the last programs. The hatred. You hate your enemy more than you love your family. And to the point that you compromise, you end up hurting the people you love most. How heartbreaking is that? So if anything can be learned from our father Abraham, the father of all nations, is that everybody has their role. Respect that role, respect other people's role. Now, of course, everyone points fingers and says, you're the one that hates me. It's not that I hate you. Well, everybody can do their research and discover that. The true lovers of peace never want war. They will fight war if there's no choice. What they want is that harmony within diversity. They want the nations of the world to remain intact as diverse nations, but all different colors, different hues, different musical notes of a large cosmic composition. And we pray, and we dream, and we imagine that day when that will happen. So though we still have some of our battles to fight, we are closer than ever. But now it's up to us, firstly individually, to make peace, more than just peace. In Hebrew, the word for peace is shalom. Shalom is more than just absence of war. It means completeness, wholesomeness. It's a state of its own. It's not just the absence of a negative. Beauty is not just the absence of ugliness. So shalom is a type of harmony of many details coming together and creating a reality that's more than the sum of the parts. And ultimately, this is something each of us can access within ourselves. The people who are most secure about themselves are the ones that coexist with others very well, even those they disagree with. And that's what we're aspiring to, and that's what we hope for. Now, it would be beautiful if the United Nations personified that. That's what it was meant to be. Unfortunately, their agenda could also be hijacked. So, as we speak about nations of the world, we're looking to understand that each of them is necessary and they all complement each other. Every nation has its own culture, has its own uniqueness, has its own language, its own music. I remember Napster. Remember Napster? That digitalized all the music and it was free and it was a whole revolution. So I remember when Napster opened up that music, I, in my own intrigue, went and downloaded songs from every country that I was able to get my hands on. From A to Z, from Azerbaijan to Zaire. And it was fascinating to hear the music of different countries. It told such another story. Story of their pains, of their joys, of their culture, of their leanings and tendencies. I probably saved it somewhere, but I thought it was fascinating. How different countries, different styles. And I saw right there the harmony within diversity. So diversity can be seen by some as threatening, or you could see it as enriching. So while it's true we once all spoke the same tongue, and then the separation of the tongues, the Bible tells us, was due to a problem, because people were uniting in crime. They were uniting in defying God and ethics. So therefore the Bible tells us that's why it's called Babylon, from the word Babel, confusing their languages. But it also created a diversity and the ultimate ability to have different strengths all coming together. So yes, we pray for the day when all the nations will join and be united as one, but not as one as a clone, but as one, each one doing their thing, but each one contributing to the greater good. That's what we look for. Now, of course, in time of war like this, it's hard to imagine. You see the sheer death, the sheer hatred, the sheer pain and blood that's shed, man against man, when we're all part of one human race. So it's hard to imagine. But that's what we're really fighting for. That's what we should be fighting for. We're not fighting against an enemy, we're fighting for a world where these enemies no longer attack one another. So even if you disagree, find a peaceful way to disagree. Find a peaceful way to converse. Get it out of your system. Don't allow your hatred, don't allow your passions to destroy you and everyone around you, including your loved ones. So this is a passionate appeal to each nation, to each person in this world, to try to find the commonality between us. There's far more things in common than there are differences. And when we can do that, we can be that orchestra that plays that cosmic symphony. May that be quickly in our time. And each of us can do something about it on a microcosmic level, in our own communities, in our own homes, in our families. You know, you have families that don't talk to each other. You have communities that are split apart. You have sometimes you're split, and you yourself are split from yourself. Different voices, different directions, things are tugging at you, different expectations, demands. So it's time to find that deeper oneness that harmonizes, that balances all the details into one larger and greater whole. Thank you. This has been Simon Jacobson. It's always an honor. Please, if you enjoyed this, share with others, subscribe to our growing YouTube channel, and I'd love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your comments, your suggestions. Go to meaningfullife.com for a wide array of materials and insights and inspirations. And please, again, share your feedback. Thank you and be blessed.